In this video, we take a closer look at the surface hardening of steel. This is necessary if the wear resistance of components in contact with each other is to be increased by a hard surface. This is the case, for example, with tooth flanks of gear wheels that permanently slide on each other during operation. In these cases, hardening is basically a possible heat treatment. However, the disadvantage is the reduction in toughness and embrittlement of the steel, which can lead to unpredictable material failure. For this reason, it is necessary to harden only the surface of a component so that the core retains its toughness. This is known as surface hardening. Typical examples of surface hardening are gears or guide rails. However, crankshafts or camshafts are also usually surface hardened after quenching and tempering. So note, surface hardening only hardens the surface layer to increase wear resistance, leaving the core of the component tough. Depending on the type of surface hardening, there are different processes such as flame hardening, induction hardening, laser hardening, case hardening, or nitriding. With the exception of nitriding, the increase in hardness of all surface hardening processes is based on microstructural changes during heating and subsequent quenching, as in normal quenching and tempering. More information can be found in the linked video. Let's first take a closer look at flame hardening. In flame hardening, a torch flame is passed over the surface of the material to be hardened. The high temperatures austenitize the surface and the steel changes from the body-centered cubic ferrite lattice to the face-centered cubic austenite lattice. The carbon previously bound in the cementite becomes soluble in the austenite microstructure. Water jets are positioned directly behind the burner flames to quench the heated surface. The rapid cooling ensures that the carbon can no longer diffuse out of the transforming lattice. The forcibly dissolved carbon forms a distorted lattice structure known as martensite. This martensite microstructure is very hard and is largely responsible for the wear resistance after quenching. Unlike traditional quenching and tempering, subsequent tempering is not common in flame hardening. This generally also applies to other surface hardening processes, as the unhardened core already has sufficient toughness so that the component does not become brittle during quenching and thus retains a certain formability anyway. The thickness of the hardened surface layer can be controlled by the speed at which the flame is passed over the surface of the workpiece. The slower the speed, the deeper the heat can penetrate and austenitize the microstructure, and the thicker the surface layer after quenching. At the same time, of course, the cooling rate required for the formation of martensite in the deeper surface layers must be provided. As alloying elements generally reduce the critical cooling rate, deeper layers can be hardened in high alloy steels. Flame hardening is one of the oldest methods of surface hardening. However, it has limitations due to the relatively bulky arrangement of torches and water nozzles, especially for small components with complex geometries. For example, in the case of very small gears, not only the flanks are hardened, but also the areas further inside due to the relatively large heat-affected zone. With large surfaces to be hardened, the risk of unwanted hardening is lower, but the design effort is higher because the shape of the burner and the water nozzle must always be adapted to the shape of the workpiece. Flame hardening is also generally inferior to induction and laser hardening in terms of the accuracy of the hardening depth. In all surface hardening processes, heating should be carried out as quickly as possible to minimize the heat-affected zone at undesirable areas. Otherwise, there is a risk of thermal stress or distortion of the component geometry. In addition, long heating times lead to increased scale formation, which usually requires post-processing. Although rapid heating is always desirable, it should be noted that the thermodynamic equilibrium in the microstructure is no longer present. This leads to a shift of the austenitization temperature to higher values. In principle, the burner flame and the long heat-up times during flame hardening result in a relatively large heat-affected zone. In the case of small geometries, such as a thin shaft, this can lead to undesirable hardening over the entire cross-section. In such cases, induction hardening can be used to harden only the surface of such thin-walled components to within a few tenths of a millimeter. Induction hardening is based on the phenomenon of electromagnetic induction, which is also used in induction cookers or transformers. A high-frequency alternating current is generated in a copper electrode, which is formed to the shape of the workpiece to be hardened. This electrode is also known as an inductor and forms the primary coil of a transformer in a figurative sense. The alternating current creates a constantly changing magnetic field around the electrode. This alternating field penetrates the adjacent workpiece and generates eddy currents there. In a figurative sense, the workpiece represents the so-called secondary coil of a transformer. The very high eddy currents of sometimes several thousand amperes per square millimeter lead to a strong heating of the workpiece. During induction hardening, the austenitized surface is usually quenched using water nozzles, which are moved along with the inductor over the workpiece. In cases where only very low hardening depths are achieved, quenching can also be carried out without water through the relatively cool core of the workpiece. This is then referred to as self-quenching. As a very high surface hardness can be achieved during induction hardening, high residual stresses can occur. This may require subsequent tempering at low temperatures. The fact that heat is mainly generated on the surface and less on the inside of the material is due to the so-called skin effect. While the current density in a conductor cross-section is constant with direct current, with alternating current the current density increases with increasing frequency in the outer areas and decreases in the interior. The frequency of the eddy currents in the workpiece depends on the frequency of the AC current in the electrode. This makes it relatively easy to control the hardening depth by the frequency. The higher the frequency, the greater the skin effect and the thinner the hardness layers that can be achieved. The AC frequency to be set will therefore depend on the hardening depth to be achieved. At a frequency of 50 Hz, hardening depths in the range of 10 to 20 mm can be achieved. In the frequency range from 1 to about 10 kHz, hardening depths of about 1 to 5 mm can be achieved. In the high frequency range up to several megahertz, hardening layers as thin as a few tenths of a millimeter are possible. Heating times for induction hardening are generally much shorter than for flame hardening, as the specific heat output can be around 10 times higher at several kilowatts per square centimeter. This has the advantage that scale formation is relatively low and the amount of post-processing required is reduced. The risk of hardening distortion is also greatly minimized. In addition, induction hardening does not produce any toxic fumes, as is the case with flame hardening. Another advantage of induction hardening is the more even heating of the surface, provided the inductor is optimally adapted to the workpiece. However, this requires a high level of tool design in advance, meaning that induction hardening is particularly economical in automated production lines with large batch sizes. Due to the high electricity costs, cost-effectiveness increases if only small areas of a workpiece need to be hardened. Laser hardening offers even shorter heating times for the surface to be hardened than induction hardening. This significantly reduces the already low levels of distortion and scaling. Oxidation of the surface can even be avoided completely when using inert gases. In laser hardening, a laser beam with around 10 times the specific power compared to induction hardening is moved over the surface to be hardened. The enormous heat of the diode laser of several kilowatts leads to a heating of the surface layer to just below the melting temperature in a very short time. As the heat input is limited to the focal spot of the laser, unnecessary heating of unwanted areas is avoided. As a result, the locally heated area is quickly quenched by the cooler surrounding areas. This self-quenching makes quenching with water jets obsolete. Depending on the focusing and process control, the laser spot covers a track width of 1 to around 50 mm. Large surface layers must therefore be scanned line by line with the laser. Typical hardening depths for laser hardening are in the range of 0.1 to 2 mm. As with induction hardening, the smaller the areas to be hardened and the thinner the hardening depths, the greater the cost-effectiveness of laser hardening. Laser hardening is particularly suitable for areas that are very difficult to access, such as recesses or blind holes. In principle, the toughness of steels increases as the carbon content decreases, as there are then fewer brittle cementite components in the microstructure. So if components are to be very tough, they must inevitably be relatively low in carbon. At the same time, however, the low carbon content reduces the hardenability of the material, since it is precisely the carbon that is forcibly dissolved in the lattice that leads to the necessary martensite formation. In order to harden such low carbon steels, a process called case hardening is used. In case hardening, a low carbon steel with a maximum of 0.2% carbon is first exposed to a carbon-containing environment. In the past, the steel was placed in boxes filled with carbon granules and then sealed airtight. Hence the name case hardening. The steel is then placed in a furnace for several hours at temperatures between 900 and 1000 degrees Celsius. Nowadays, the components are usually annealed in carbon-containing atmospheres in gas furnaces or in molten salts. However, the physical processes explained in the following are basically the same. As a result of the high temperatures, The carbon in the environment diffuses into the surface layer of the component and causes the carbon content there to increase to a hardenable level of around 0.8% carbon, while the core remains low in carbon. This accumulation of carbon in the surface layer is known as carburization. The depth of carburization is typically between 0.1 and 5 millimeters. After carburizing the surface layer, the actual hardening takes place by quenching the component in water or in another quenching medium. Depending on the process control, the steel is quenched directly after carburizing, which is referred to as direct hardening, or the steel is first cooled slowly in air after carburizing and the hardening process is carried out subsequently. After case hardening, tempering is generally required to reduce the high residual stresses caused by the large hardness differences between the surface and the core of the component. After case hardening, the surface of the component is not only very hard and wear-resistant, but the residual compressive stresses generated also increase the fatigue strength to a particularly high degree. This makes case hardening particularly suitable for dynamically stressed components such as gears or drive shafts. A common feature of the surface hardening processes presented so far is that the hard surface is achieved by a martensitic transformation of the microstructure. However, such a transformation of the microstructure is a problem for ensuring precise production with as little post-processing as possible, as the transformation of the microstructure generally leads to distortion. The scale layers that form can also make post-processing necessary. In such cases, nitriding can provide a solution, in which no microstructural transformation takes place. During nitriding, special steels, known as nitriding steels, which contain alloying elements such as aluminum, chromium, molybdenum, vanadium or titanium, are exposed to a nitrogen-containing atmosphere at temperatures of around 500 degrees Celsius. The nitrogen atoms diffuse into the steel surface and combine with the alloying elements to form hard and wear-resistant nitrides. While the surface hardness increases significantly due to the nitrides formed, the properties of the core of the component remain almost unchanged as the nitrides only form on the surface. Layer thicknesses typically range from 0.1 to 1 millimeter. Thicker nitride layers are only possible at great expense. The long annealing times, sometimes several days, can make nitriding very time-consuming and therefore expensive. The nitrides formed on the surface also create stresses in the material. However, far from weakening the material, the residual compressive stresses increase the fatigue strength of the component. The nitride layer also improves corrosion resistance.